Tiffany had never been in a Pilates studio in her life. Gyms, sure. Yoga, a few times. But Pilates, the kind done in sleek, minimalist studios with reformer machines that looked like futuristic beds, was new territory. She'd only agreed to come because her friend Lila didn't want to go alone. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Thanks so much for watching. It was a Tuesday morning, she had the day off, and she figured at worst she'd get a stretch out of it. She did not expect her, Andrea. The name alone sounded like a song. She was at the front of the room when Tiffany walked in, wearing a black, form-fitting workout set that showed every curve. Her long brown hair pulled into a high ponytail with streaks of sunlit blonde catching in the light. Her skin was a warm olive, the kind of color that came from both genetics and years under the Mediterranean sun. Her eyes, blue, almost unnaturally so against her Spanish features, landed on Tiffany for exactly 1 second before she smiled. It was over. Tiffany knew it then. Tiffany had been with men, plenty of them. And she had wanted women, maybe more than she'd ever wanted men. But wanting was safer when it stayed inside your head. In real life, women were intimidating. Women knew too much. Women had the same body you did, which meant they knew exactly how to notice hesitation, insecurity, inexperience. And Tiffany was terrified of disappointing them. But Andrea's voice, low, confident, tinged with Madrid, made her forget that fear for the length of the warm-up. Shoulders down, lengthen the spine. Good! Breathe into it, guapa. The guapa wasn't even for her specifically. Tiffany was sure Andrea said it to everyone, but her pulse spiked all the same. Andrea was famous here, apparently. Lila whispered that she trained celebrities, models, even a couple of pop stars when they were in town. Tiffany could see why. Every movement Andrea demonstrated was precise, strong, elegant. Her body was the kind of fit you couldn't fake. Years of discipline, training, and, Tiffany suspected, a love for what she did. By the halfway point of class, Tiffany's thighs were shaking, but not entirely from the workout. Andrea had corrected her form 3 times, each one with the lightest touch at her waist, her shoulder, her ankle. Each time, Tiffany's stomach fluttered in a way that had nothing to do with muscle strain. After class, Lila chatted with Andrea like they were old friends. Tiffany stood awkwardly to the side, trying to look casual while also memorizing the way Andrea's ponytail swayed when she laughed. "This is Tiffany," Lila said finally, pulling her into the conversation. "First time here." Andrea's eyes flicked to hers again, and Tiffany felt pinned in place. "You did well," Andrea said. "Especially for a first time. You should come again." It sounded casual, but Tiffany caught the way Andrea's gaze lingered. Not long enough to be obvious, but long enough to make her wonder if she was imagining it. Andrea moved on to check something at the front desk, leaving Tiffany with the aftertaste of her attention. Lila was already gathering her bag, buzzing from the workout. "She likes you," Lila said once they stepped outside into the bright California morning. "She said that to make me feel good," Tiffany replied, adjusting her tote on her shoulder. "It's called customer retention." "Mm-hmm," Lila said, clearly unconvinced. "She also looked at you." Tiffany rolled her eyes, but her brain was already replaying that look, slowing it down like a scene in a movie she didn't want to admit she had tickets for. That night, Tiffany sat on her couch, laptop balanced on her knees, intending to answer emails. Instead, she typed Sunrise Studio Pilates Andrea into the search bar. The studio's Instagram page was a glossy feed of sunlit reformers, celebrity clients, and perfectly framed shots of Andrea mid-demonstration. Hair up, hair down, in sleek black or soft gray sets, sometimes laughing, sometimes so focused it looked like she was in another world. She learned Andrea's last name, Alvarez, and that she'd moved to Los Angeles from Madrid nearly 9 years ago. Former gymnast, professional dancer, now one of the most sought-after instructors in the city. The kind of woman who seemed to belong everywhere and to everyone, yet somehow didn't feel untouchable. Tiffany closed the laptop and let her head fall back against the couch. This was exactly why she didn't let herself get close to women. Because even from a distance, they had a way of getting under her skin. And Andrea was already there. The following Tuesday, Lila texted, "Going again tomorrow. You in?" Tiffany stared at the message for a full minute. Her rule was simple. Once was safe, twice meant trouble. But her thumbs typed before she could overthink it. Yeah. What time? When she walked into the studio the next morning, Andrea was at the front, adjusting springs for the early class. The sight was enough to make Tiffany's stomach flip. Andrea looked up, recognition flashing in her eyes. "Tiffany," she said, like it was the easiest word in the world. "Back again." "Guess I'm a glutton for punishment," Tiffany replied, setting her water bottle by the nearest reformer. Andrea's smile was quick. Then she gestured to the machine. "We'll see if we can make you work harder this time." The class was smaller than the last. Only 6 people. Tiffany ended up directly across from Andrea, which meant every time Andrea demonstrated a move, Tiffany's eyes followed without permission. Andrea was different with a small group, more precise, more hands-on. Halfway through, she came to Tiffany's side during a series of long stretches. "Lengthen through the heel," she said quietly, her hand hovering near Tiffany's calf to cue the direction. "Yes. That's it. Don't force it. Let it open." Her voice, low and deliberate, settled somewhere deep in Tiffany's chest. She wasn't flirting, she was teaching, but the intimacy of her attention felt dangerously close to something else. After class, Andrea was wiping down a machine when Tiffany walked past to get her bag. "Good work today," Andrea said without looking up. Then, like it was an afterthought, "You have nice control. It's rare for someone new." Tiffany froze for half a second. "Thanks," she managed. "You're a good teacher." Andrea looked up at that, her eyes catching Tiffany's. "I try." It was nothing. It was everything. Tiffany left before she could make it obvious she'd forgotten how to breathe. The rest of the day, she couldn't shake it. Not just Andrea's face, but the way being around her made Tiffany feel like she could be more present, more confident, more herself. And that scared her almost as much as it thrilled her. The following week, Tiffany arrived early, hoping she'd have a minute to collect herself before class. Andrea was in the studio already, adjusting springs, hair back in the high ponytail again. "You're early," Andrea said when she noticed her. "Traffic was lighter than I expected," Tiffany replied, setting her things down. It wasn't a total lie. She had left her apartment 15 minutes earlier than necessary. Andrea nodded toward a reformer in the front row. "That one's yours today." When class began, Andrea seemed to find her way to Tiffany's side more often than the others. A small correction at her shoulder, a reminder to keep her ribs down. A quick, quiet, perfect, that made Tiffany's pulse kick like she'd just sprinted. Afterward, Andrea lingered by the door as Tiffany was leaving. "Do you ever do one-on-one sessions?" she asked. Tiffany blinked. "No, I've never." "They can help you progress faster," Andrea said. "And you clearly have potential." Her eyes held Tiffany's for a beat too long. "Think about it." Tiffany managed a nod. "I will." She walked out into the California sunshine with her mind a mess of thoughts she didn't want to untangle just yet. But one thing was certain. She'd be back. And not just for the workout. That night, Tiffany replayed every moment in her head. The way Andrea had said her name. The way she moved through the room with quiet authority. The way she seemed to see Tiffany without looking too long. and yet somehow it felt like she looked long enough. She knew she was in trouble. The decision to book a one-on-one session felt to Tiffany like stepping into a warm current. Not a riptide exactly, but something that would carry her farther out than she had gone before. She told herself it was about form, precision. She wanted to learn faster, right? When she walked into the studio that Wednesday morning, the space was empty except for Andrea, who was checking springs at the far end. She looked up, smiled, and it felt like the air between them stretched. "Buenos dias, guapa," Andrea said. "Ready to work?" Tiffany set her bag down, the strap slipping from her shoulder. "Ready." Andrea gestured to a reformer near the window. "This one gets the best light in the morning, makes it harder to hide." Tiffany arched an eyebrow. "Do I hide?" Andrea's smile was slight, knowing. "Sometimes." From the start, the session felt different. Without a class around them, Andrea's focus was undiluted. Every movement Tiffany made was seen, adjusted, refined. When Tiffany's spine arched too much during bridging, Andrea stepped close and placed her palm just above the curve of her ribs. "Keep this quiet," she whispered. "Let the power come from here." Her other hand hovered over Tiffany's abdomen, not touching, but somehow more intimate for the restraint. Tiffany's throat went dry. She did as she was told, feeling her muscles work under the weight of Andrea's attention. They moved on to long stretches on the tower. Andrea stood at Tiffany's side, her voice low and steady. "Press evenly through the heels. Don't rush the return. Control is strength. See?" "See?" Tiffany echoed, the word foreign and warm in her mouth. Halfway through, Andrea called for a break. She handed Tiffany a water bottle and leaned against the tower, casual in a way that didn't feel casual at all. "So," Andrea said, "what do you do outside of this?" "I'm a content producer," Tiffany replied. "Freelance. Mostly other people's stories." Andrea tilted her head. "And yours?" Tiffany hesitated. "Mine, I keep to myself." Andrea's gaze was steady, unreadable. "Some stories want to be told." She took a sip of her own water, then added, "But they wait for the right person to hear them." It was a simple exchange, but it left Tiffany feeling as though something inside her had been noticed, something she hadn't intended to show. When they returned to the reformer, Andrea introduced an exercise Tiffany had never done before. Foot straps, legs suspended, slow circles in the air. The motion was hypnotic, the kind that required full concentration. "Control the descent," Andrea instructed. "Don't let gravity win." Her fingertips brushed Tiffany's ankle to correct the angle. "Better," she said softly, and for a moment, Tiffany forgot to exhale. By the end, Tiffany's muscles trembled, but it was the good kind of exhaustion, the kind that made her feel alive in every joint. Andrea smiled as Tiffany sat up. "You learn quickly." "Good teacher," Tiffany said, and meant it. As they left the studio together, Andrea paused at the doorway. "Coffee?" she asked, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Tiffany's pulse jumped. "Sure." The cafe across the street was small, all wood and plants. They found a table by the window. Outside, morning traffic slid by in muted colors. Andrea told her about Madrid, late dinners, narrow streets, summers where the air didn't cool until midnight. She spoke of moving to California for dance and how Pilates had been an unexpected but perfect next chapter. Tiffany listened, watching the way Andrea's hands moved as she talked, strong, expressive, a mirror of the precision she had in class. When it was Tiffany's turn, she told Andrea about growing up on the East Coast, moving west for work, and how she'd always been better at telling other people's stories than her own. Andrea smiled faintly. "You don't seem afraid of me." Tiffany blinked. "Should I be?" "No," Andrea said, shaking her head. I meant, some people hold themselves tight. They think being seen means being judged. You're not like that. Tiffany wasn't sure whether to laugh or confess. I'm trying not to be. Then keep trying. That night, Tiffany lay in bed replaying the morning in her mind. The way Andrea's hand had hovered near her ribs, the way her voice had softened when she'd said, keep trying. She realized she was already past the point of pretending she was just there for fitness. Over the next 2 weeks, they fell into a rhythm. Wednesdays at 8 became their time. Andrea would sometimes start with a joke about how Tiffany's posture had improved enough to survive Madrid, or how she was almost ready for the advanced springs. Tiffany began to notice things. The faint scar just below Andrea's jaw, the way she tilted her head when listening, the soft laugh that only happened when something genuinely surprised her. The attraction was undeniable now, humming quietly beneath every correction, every held gaze. But with it came Tiffany's old fear, that if this went further, she wouldn't be enough. That Andrea, with all her experience and ease, would see right through her and find something lacking. After one session, as Tiffany was putting on her jacket, Andrea said, "You move like someone who trusts her body, but sometimes I think you don't trust yourself." Tiffany froze, caught off guard by the accuracy. "You read everyone like this?" Andrea shrugged lightly. "Only the ones I want to know better." It was such a simple sentence, but it stayed with Tiffany the rest of the day. It was late when Tiffany's phone buzzed. Last-minute cancellation at 8 p.m., want it? Andrea. She read the text 3 times before answering. "I'll be there." The studio was almost unrecognizable at night. Gone was the bright morning light. Now it was shadows and soft pools of glow from the sconces along the mirrored wall. The air smelled faintly of eucalyptus and something warmer, maybe Andrea's perfume. Andrea was alone, standing near a reformer, her black workout set hugging every line of her body. "Evening, guapa," she said, voice low. "Let's see what you've got left for me." Tiffany swallowed. "I've got enough." They began like any other session, footwork, alignment, breath. But Andrea's touch lingered longer, her hands resting a second too long on Tiffany's hips, sliding just a little lower as she adjusted her stance. "On your back," Andrea said softly, eyes steady on hers. Tiffany climbed onto the reformer, the vinyl cool under her shoulders. Andrea slipped her feet into the straps, guiding her legs upward until her knees bent, thighs parted. "Slow circles," Andrea murmured, hands firm on Tiffany's hips. "I want to see every muscle work." The movement was hypnotic. Taut straps, steady breath, Andrea's hands both guiding and exploring. Her fingertips traced down the inside of Tiffany's thigh, and the air between them changed. Tiffany's rhythm faltered. Andrea smiled like she knew exactly why. "Focus," she said, though her touch made it impossible. When Andrea's hand slid between her thighs, there was nothing clinical about it, only deliberate, relentless attention. Her thumb found her with slow, perfect pressure, adjusting in rhythm with Tiffany's breath. Andrea's eyes never left her face, reading every shift, every sharp inhale. "You're beautiful like this," she whispered. Tiffany reached up, dragging her into a kiss that was all teeth and hunger. Her hands pulled at Andrea's shirt until she felt skin, warm and alive. Andrea pressed into her, their hips moving together in time neither of them had to think about. The straps went slack when Andrea unhooked them. She pulled Tiffany upright, turned her, and bent her forward against the reformer's frame. Tiffany's palms flattened on the cool metal bar. Her reflection in the mirror flushed, eyes half-lidded. Andrea's mouth found her from behind, unhurried but merciless, her hands anchoring Tiffany in place. Every sound Tiffany made filled the quiet studio, each one drawing Andrea deeper in. The pressure built until Tiffany's knees trembled, her grip on the bar tight enough to ache. her body breaking into shivers as the last wave hit and carried her under. After, Andrea stood behind her, their bodies still close, both breathing hard. Tiffany's skin was damp, the air cool against it. Andrea kissed the back of her neck, slow and lingering. "Still scared of being with a woman?" she murmured. Tiffany turned to face her, hair mussed, lips swollen. "Now I'm scared I'll never want anyone else." Andrea smiled, slow, certain, and kissed her again, sealing the truth of it. They left the studio together, the night air cool against their flushed skin. Tiffany's legs still felt unsteady, but not from the workout. Andrea walked beside her, one hand at the small of her back, a quiet gesture that felt more intimate than anything she could remember. Neither of them spoke until they reached the corner. Andrea stopped, turning toward her. "My place?" she asked. Tiffany almost laughed, not from humor, but from the dizzying truth that she didn't need to think about it. "Yes." Andrea's apartment was warm, lived in, the faint smell of rosemary in the air. She handed Tiffany a glass of water and didn't rush, letting the moment breathe. Tiffany realized that was what made Andrea so disarming. She never pushed, but she also never hesitated when it mattered. They ended up on Andrea's couch, legs tucked under them, still close enough that Tiffany could feel the heat radiating from her. "What's going on in your head right now?" Andrea asked, tilting her head. Tiffany smirked. "Do you want the polite answer or the truth?" "The truth. That I've been wanting this since the first day I walked into your class, and I'm still trying to believe it's actually happening." Andrea leaned forward, brushing her lips against Tiffany's. Softer this time, a slow exhale after the fire they'd just walked through together. "It's happening," she said, "and we're just getting started." They stayed there until the city outside was quiet, talking in low voices, kissing in unhurried intervals, their hands finding each other naturally. Tiffany felt no rush to leave, no impulse to protect herself the way she always had before. When she finally curled against Andrea, Andrea wrapped her arms around her and said, almost to herself, "You were never going to disappoint me." Tiffany smiled into her shoulder. "Good, because I'm not going anywhere."